And again, folks, welcome to another tropical update from Cayman Hurricane Center. Again, closely monitoring this very strong and in many ways historic Category 5 hurricane Milton in the Gulf of Mexico, currently en route to Florida, and is expected to make landfall there in Florida as we get into the overnight hours of Wednesday into Thursday morning. And indeed, will be impacting a great many areas across the state of Florida. So let's get right into it, folks. Again, our Hurricane Milton, certainly since our last update yesterday, very much intensified to a pretty significant Category 5 hurricane. We did note that we did see on the Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance missions yesterday and even at a couple of them today had recorded some of those surface winds, potentially up to about 200 miles per hour. Quite impressive to see. We do know that there wasn't a whole large area of those 200 miles per hour winds, so I didn't see that fully reflected on the advisory, but we did see the system getting up to about 180 on the advisory. We did have fairly large swaths of that within the core, and of course, pressures remarkable, falling all the way down to 897 millibars. Quite incredible to see. Indeed, for this time of year, certainly Milton is the strongest hurricane since Wilma of 2005, which again is the current record holder for the strongest hurricane for the Atlantic Basin. Again, also quite interestingly, in the same place now, Wilma was in October of 2005. Milton, again, now near north of the Yucatan Channel, on its way to Florida, just like Wilma was. Again, notably smaller than Wilma, but the important thing here is that Milton will be growing quite significantly in size as it approaches Florida. So don't let the current size of Milton fool you. It is going to be growing. So let's get down to the details here of Milton and what we are expecting of Milton. So, of course, Milton, as of the advisory, 23 north, 86.9, about 280 west southwest of Dry Tortugas, about 440 miles southwest of Tampa. Winds currently at 165. Now, I will say that in the overnight into the morning hours of this morning, what we did have was an eye wall replacement cycle, which allowed the system to reorganize, though it did weaken the hurricane down to a borderline high end 4, low end 5. But after the eye wall replacement cycle completed, the hurricane very quickly came back up to a fairly decent Category 5 hurricane. Again, here we go, 165 once again. Again, moving generally to the east, to east-northeast, 10 pressures now back down to 902 millibars. Again, noting earlier this evening, the pressure was at 918. So indeed, our hurricane here is intensifying further. Of course, we could see here where we do have hurricane warnings across Florida here, hurricane watches as well for northeastern portions of Florida, even parts of southwestern parts of Florida, the Florida Key West here. We do see tropical storm warnings here for the parts of the northwestern sections of Florida and much of the southeast, south, and much of the Florida Keys and the Bahamas now. We do see those tropical storm warnings being issued. Now, one thing I do want to make note here, folks, is that The hurricane does appear to be pulling a little bit further south and east than what was forecasted. Again, the hurricane being used to be out here and was projected to come across like so. Of course, now it being further south and east, we're likely to see again the forecast to shift a little bit further to the south. I guess one could say maybe a little bit, slightly bit better news for the Tampa Bay area. Not all that much, I will say, albeit that the most extreme conditions may potentially be just that slightly bit better for Tampa. Again, the system is expected to grow quite significantly in size, and with that, the impacts will be very far reaching across a good chunk of Florida. And the most significant conditions we do expect to be somewhere within this area here. Of course, some pretty strong conditions, again, especially if the system does move a bit further to the south. We could see, again, those hurricane warnings and watches extend a bit further south. So we'll be watching for that as we go. But again, regardless of that fact, the hurricane is expected to grow nearly double, if not triple, its size by the time it gets to the west coast of Florida. Even bigger as it moves over Florida and over the southwest Atlantic. It'll be a bigger system. And of course, the effects will be far reaching. Also to note, folks, we do have the tropical storm watches for South Carolina into Georgia as well. Even some of the tropical storm warnings extending into the Florida-Georgia border area. And again, as noted here, we do have a tropical storm warning for the Bahamas, the northwestern Bahamas. They will be getting in on that action as the system grows in size. Again, we do expect as it approaches the coast of Florida, there will likely be some fluctuations in intensity, but we are still talking about a fairly significant major hurricane approaching land. And obviously, there will be some weakening due to land interaction here, likely coming down just below major hurricane status by the time it comes over off of the east coast of Florida, but hurricane nevertheless. Again, as of now, the hurricane force winds roughly 30 miles from the center, tropical storm force winds 140 miles from the center. But again, as noted, folks, it will be growing in size, almost double, if not triple, the size that it is now by the time it approaches late night tomorrow into Thursday into towards landfall. So let's talk impacts here, folks. Again, we are looking at some significant surges here. Again, you can see for the particular areas, we are looking at, again, the Tampa Bay area and areas just to the south down to Englewood, 10 to 15 feet. Englewood to Bonita Beach, 8 to 12. Anclote River to Chesapeake, you're looking at 5 to 10 feet there. 5 to 8, Bonita to Chosalukski, 3 to 5 down to Flamingo, and again 3 to 5 as you go Chesapeake to Yankeetown, up to Swanee River, and then 1 to 3 up to Indian Pass. The Florida Keys 1 to 3, and 1 to 3 down to Palm Beach, Martin County line up to Sebastian Inlet. 3 to 5 all the way up through Georgia and South Carolina, 1 to 3 beyond there as well. We could see some additional increases here, especially if the hurricane does pass further to the south. So we will note that as well. Just quickly running through here in terms of rainfall. Again, we are looking at a fair bit of rainfall over Florida, 6 to 12 inches with as much as 18, especially where the core passes. And we may, again, if it does travel a bit further to the south, we could see again